We continue now at the top of Daf Bezam at Aleph and Meseches Bava Basra. This is Bava Basra Daf 2a. The Mishnah says, Hashutfin sheratzu lasos mechitza. If the partners want to make a wall b'chotzer in a courtyard, bonen es hakosel be'emtza, they build the wall in the middle. Rashi explains, Hashutfin sheyesh len chotzer b'shutfis. We're talking about partners who together they own a chotzer, they own a courtyard. Ubote shneihen psuchen l'sochu. And their houses, they open up into that courtyard. Anytime the Chachamim talk about Chatzeros courtyards, it's in front of the houses, Verov Tashmishon b'chotzer, and they do most of their things in the chotzer. There's a lot of use made of the chotzer. So it said in the Mishnah again, they build it be'emtza. If they want to divide up the chotzer, they have to build that wall in the middle of the chotzer. Zeh nosen mechelko chatzi makom ove hakosel. This person gives from his side, he gives half of the thickness of the wall. V'chein zeh. And this one, essentially, the wall is built equally upon both of their properties. And the Mishnah continues, Makom shenagu, livnos gavil, gazis kfisin levainin, in a place where the minhag is to build with gavil, gazis kfisin levainin. These are different kinds of stones and bricks. So bonin, they do whatever the custom is, hakol kaminhag hamedina, everything follows the minhag of that local place. Gavil, let's say they're using stones of Gavil, those are essentially uncut stones. Zenos and Gimel Tvachim, Vizenos and Gimel Tvachim, this one gives 3 Tvachim, and this one gives 3 Tvachim. Begazis, if we're talking about cut stones, Zenos and Tvachim Umechsa, this one gives 1.5 Tefach, Vizenos, 2.5 Tefach rather, Vizenos and Tvachim Umechsa, and this one gives 2.5 Tefach. Bekfisin, let's say you're talking about kfisin, which are half bricks, Zenos and Tvachim, this one gives 2 Tefach, Vizenos and Tvachim, and this one gives 2 Tefach. Bilevainim, and if they're using larger bricks, Zenos and Tefach Umechsa, this one will give a Tefach and a half, Vizenos and Tefach Umechsa, and this one will give a Tefach and a half. And Rashi explains, Gavil, Gazis, Kfisin, Hakol, Mefarish, Begemara, all of these different kinds of stones and bricks, they will be explained in the Gemara. Hakol, Kaminhag, Hamedina, everything follows the local custom. And Minhag, Livnos, Begvil, if the minhag is to use Gavil, again, that's the non-chiseled stones. Ein Chavero, Yacholomar, Eini Chafetz, Ela Gazis. So the other one can't say, well, I want to use the Gazis, I want to use the chiseled stones, because again, they follow the local custom. Zenos and Gimel Tvachim, then it said by Gavil, each one has to give 3 Tefach. She'ove Kosel Gavil, because the thickness of a wall that's made out of Gavil stones, Vav Tvachim is 6 Tvachim. V'shel Gazis Chamisha, if it's made out of Gazis stones, it's going to be a thickness of a wall of 5 Tvachim. V'shel Kfisim Dalit, if we're going to use the half bricks, the thickness of the wall ends up being 4 Tefach. V'shel Leveinim Gimel, and if you're using the whole bricks, the thickness of the wall ends up being 3 Tvachim. And the Mishnah continues, Lafikach, therefore, im Nafal HaKosel, let's say the wall falls down, Hamakom Avo Avonim Shel Shneihem, the area and also the stones belong to both of them. And Rashi explains, Lafikach, therefore, Hoalu v'tchilas habinyan chayvam chachamim livnos bein shneim. Since originally when they build it, the chachamim say they have to build it as partners. So therefore, im nafal hakosel achar shanim rabim. Let's say the wall falls down after many years. Ein ha'echad yochol lomar. One of them cannot say kol hakosel nivna bechelki. The entire wall was built in my side of the chotzer. Umishali hayu ha'avonim, and the stones are all from me. Aval pi shehuchzak yoser mechaveru. Even though he might have more of a chazaka than his friend. For example, let's say the wall all fell into his side, so he has more of a chazaka, still he cannot make that claim, as the Gemara will explain. And the Mishnah continues, V'chein begina, the same halacha is true by a garden. Rashi says, V'chein begina mechayven es shneihen livnos. We say that both of them are obligated to build b'makom shenagu ligdor be'emsa, in a place where the custom is that. And again, they put the fence in the middle. V'chein begina makom shenagu ligdor mechayven oso. The same thing is true in a garden. If it's a place where the custom is to build a wall, so then when mechayev him, we say that he has to build the wall. Avol bebika, but if we're talking about a bika, now Rashi explains avol bebika, sada halavin, that means a field with grain. If you're talking about a bika, makam shenagu shelo ligdor, if it's a place where the custom is not to put up a fence, ein mechayven, so then we do not obligate him to put up the fence. Rashi notes, makam shenagu, the Gemara mefarish my kamar. The Gemara will explain, what are we saying over here? Is it just that standard in general by a bika, or are we specifically saying makam shenagu shelo ligdor, a place where the minhag is not to put up a fence? That will be discussed in the Gemara. Ela imratza, but rather if he wants, again talking about a bika, if he wants, konis l'soch shelo, then he can have the wall or the fence, it can be within his property, ubon, and he builds it, v'yosa chazis mi bachutz, and he makes a sign on the outside to show that it's entirely his wall. Lafikach, therefore, im nafal hakosa, let's say the wall falls in that case, hamakom v'avonim shalo, the place, the area, and the stones will be his. Now, imasu midas shneim. Now let's say they do both agree to build it, and they build it together. So then bonen es hakosel be'emtza, they build the wall in the middle. V'yosen chazas mikanu mikan, and they make the sign on both sides to show it belongs to both of them. Lefikach im nafal hakosel hamakom v'avonim shel shneim. Therefore, in such a case, if the wall falls, the area and the stones will belong to both of them. And Rashi explains, V'yosa chazas mi bachutz, they put a chazas on the outside, Mefarish b'Gemara, the Gemara will explain exactly what the chazas is. V'yosin chazas mikanu mikanu, if they both agree to build it, so then they make the chazas on both sides, Lahodia sheshneim asu, that's a sign to make it known that both of them made this wall. And the Gemara says, Savrua, right now we think, my mechitza. What does it mean when it uses the word mechitza? At the very beginning of the Mishnah, it says, Hashutfin sharatzu lasos mechitza. We think, my mechitza guda. It means a wall. As Rashi says, guda is a kosel, a wall. Kedetani, as we learned in a braisa, mechitza sakerem shenifritza. If you have a wall in a vineyard and it breaks, Omer lo gedor, and he tells them you have to fix it, you have to put the wall back up. Chazra v'nifritza, breaks again. Omer lo gedor, he says again, you have to fix it again. And Rashi explains Kidditanan. Now the Mesoras Hashah says that it's actually Kidditanya. This is actually a Brisa, not a Mishnah. In any case, the Kari Tana Laguda Mechitza. The reason we're bringing this Brisa is to show that we refer to a Guda, we refer to a wall as a Mechitza. That's the reason for bringing this Brisa, just to show the language that when the word Mechitza is used, it refers to a wall. Now the case over here is Mechitza Sakerem Shasamach L'Sada Halavan Shal Chavero. What's happening over here is you have a vineyard that is next to a field of grain. That could be a problem of kilayim, and therefore you have a wall in the middle in order to remove the issue of kilayim. Omer lo lebal hakerem gedor. So the person who owns the grain field says to the person who owns the vineyard, put up the fence, gedor ata. You have to put this fence back up. Shelo yesru gefanecha as tevuas asada. That way your vines will not prohibit, they will not create an issue of kilayim with the grain in this field. Mishum kilayim, that could be an issue of kilayim. Lefisha samach bal hasada as a zerav samach legeder. Because what happened was, since you have a fence, the person who owns the field is allowed to put his grain, his seeds, all the way up to the fence. Kedetnan beperek sheni, like we learned in the Mishnah in the second perek, hayageder bein tayim, if there's a fence between them, zeh somech legeder mikan es ilano. So if this person can put his trees right up against the fence, v'zeh somech legeder es zerav mikan, and this one is allowed to put his grain, his seeds, right up to the fence. Uchashe'ein sham geder, now if there's no fence, tanan beperek sheni, we learned in the Mishnah in the second perek, lo yita adam ilon samech l'sada, you're not allowed to have a tree right next to the field, samech l'sada chaveru, right next to the field of his friend. The person with the tree has to have a distance of 4 amos, and the reason for that is kedei avodas hakerem. That's how much space is needed to work the vineyard. Otherwise, it becomes an issue of kilayim. So essentially, the tree is the one that's supposed to be distanced unless there's a fence there. That's why he's telling him to put the fence up. Chazra v'nifritza omer lo ligdor. Again, it breaks again, and he says to him again to put back up the wall, put the fence back up, and we will continue with this discussion in the next video on Daf Beis Amid Beis.